The Chamber of Secrets has been opened.
Enemies of the air, beware.
This podcast is the property of the Half-Blood Princesses.
I'm Demi.
I'm Jess.
The story will begin in a flourish.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 6, part 1. We are so excited to be back again.
Yes, we are, and if you don't follow us on social, please do so. We are on Twitter and Instagram at HB Princesses Pod, and you can find us on Facebook and YouTube by searching The Half-Blood Princesses, a Harry Potter podcast. We also have a voicemail line, so hit us up at 412-228-5435 and leave us a voicemail. We will feature it in a future episode. And now Jess has a very special shout out.
Shout out to Where My Wand's At on Twitter. Her handle is at Fioria25. Thanks so much for supporting our podcast. It means the world to us.
And now Jess, tell everybody our topic for episode 6.
Since it's Friday the 13th, we wanted to do kind of a creepy episode. So our topic is the Chamber of Secrets. Now let's get into the quote. It's time for Quick Quotes Corner.
This quote comes from chapter 17 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets called The Heir of Slytherin. Riddle opened his mouth wide and hissed, but Harry understood what he was saying. Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four. Harry wheeled around to look up at the statue, Fawkes swaying on his shoulder. Slytherin's gigantic stone face was moving. Horror-struck, Harry saw his mouth opening, wider and wider, to make a huge black hole. And something was stirring inside the statue's mouth. Something was slithering up from its depths.
This quote is significant because it showcases the purpose of the chamber, to kill off Muggleborns and enemies of Slytherin with the basilisk, Slytherin's symbol. The gigantic statue of the Hogwarts founder is a monument to purebloods, a reminder that only those like Slytherin should be accepted as true wizards. Snakes like the basilisk are also powerful, and it is through a demonstration of power and strength that his enemies are vanquished. Heirs of Slytherin who understood their duty to purify the wizarding world and had the ability to command the beast were the only ones worthy of continuing Slytherin's work. Since the other founders didn't agree with Slytherin, he made the chamber a secret, exclusive place. The fact that it is underground also symbolizes the dark deeds, the killing, that has the potential to take place. Also, Slytherin and Hufflepuff were the only two founders to create rooms in the castle, Hufflepuff the kitchen and Slytherin the chamber. These rooms reflect the traits of their respective houses. Hufflepuff's kitchen showcases that house's way of nurturing and caring for others, as the chamber reflects Slytherin's potential for evil.
From Harry's point of view, it must be very overwhelming to see Tom Riddle open the statue's mouth and release the basilisk, because Harry can speak Parseltongue too. And also, I think it's interesting here that Tom Riddle is able to control the basilisk because he isn't in a physical state. He's just a memory from the diary. So that just shows too how powerful the heir Slytherin is. In case you missed it, since the basilisk is dead, Salazar Slytherin's statue has a new role. And it looks like Polly can speak Parseltongue because she's flying out of his mouth with the fun facts. Hey, it's Polly our owl. She's flying in with the fun facts.
Now let's talk about the Chamber of Secrets. I always knew the chamber was there. I don't know what first gave me the idea. I just liked the thought that Slytherin had left something of himself behind, said J.K. Rowling. According to Professor Binns, the story goes that Slytherin had built a hidden chamber in the castle, of which the other founders knew nothing. The existence of the Chamber of Secrets was believed by many to be a myth, but persistent rumors about the chamber shows that Slytherin spoke about it and others believed him, or even entered it themselves with Slytherin's permission. Slytherin was the only founder who built a personal secret headquarters inside the castle. The chamber is a huge temple-like room with pillars and carved serpents. There is a massive statue of Slytherin at the far end. The decorations inside show that Slytherin thought he was very important to the school. He was the only founder who left behind a statue of himself. The snakes carved around the chamber are a reference to Slytherin's powers as a Parselmouth. In the beginning, Slytherin could have used the room to instruct students in spells that the other founders disapproved of, as they all disagreed about the teaching of the dark arts. According to legend, Slytherin and Gryffindor argued over whether to allow Muggle-born students into Hogwarts. When Gryffindor apparently won, Slytherin left the school. At that time, Slytherin had made the chamber into the lair of a basilisk that would finish his noble work. The noble work is accomplished when the true heir opens the chamber and releases the monster by summoning it from within the statue of Slytherin. The basilisk's purpose is to rid and purge the school of non-pureblood students. Thus, only Parselmouths like Slytherin and his descendants can control the basilisk. So, only Parselmouths could enter the chamber. For this reason, the historians and headmasters and headmistresses who searched the castle could not find the chamber and believed it to be a myth. Only Slytherin's descendants and others that they told knew the Chamber of Secrets was not a myth. This is why there were many rumors throughout the centuries about the chamber. The chamber was opened more than once between the death of Slytherin and Tom Riddle's entrance in the 20th century. Interestingly, Riddle opened the chamber 1,000 years after Slytherin built it. Originally, people could enter the chamber through a concealed trapdoor and a series of tunnels. When Hogwarts decided to add plumbing in the 18th century, the entrance was threatened, as it was located on the site of a proposed bathroom. A student named Corvinus Gaunt, a descendant of Slytherin and relative of Riddle, made sure the trapdoor was secretly protected so that those who knew how could still go into the chamber. The entrance is now behind a sink in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom on the 2nd floor of Hogwarts. There is a tiny snake figure scratched into the tap, and when someone orders "open up" in Parseltongue, the sink recedes and a pipe appears. Sliding down the pipe will bring you to an underground passage, probably located under the lake. Those who could hear and speak to the monster, like the Gaunts, were not always discreet, and boasted about their knowledge. As nobody else could hear the creature sliding beneath the floorboards or through the plumbing, not many people believed them until Riddle unleashed the monster on the castle. 50 years later, the spirit of Tom Riddle returned to Hogwarts through his Horcrux-laden diary and released the basilisk. Harry defeated the basilisk on May 29, 1993, with the help of Fawkes the Phoenix and the Old School Sorting Hat. Also, during the Battle of Hogwarts, Ron was able to imitate the Parseltongue word for open, and he and Hermione entered the chamber to recover basilisk fangs to be used to destroy Horcruxes. Now that we've talked a little bit about the chamber, let's see what it has in store for us. Now, it's time to dive into the book topic of the week, for Tales of Magic and Mischief. It all started on Halloween. After Nearly Headless Nick's Death Day party, the trio are heading back to the Great Hall to catch the end of the Halloween feast. But on their way, Harry hears a voice say, "Rip, tear, kill." The voice was cold and murderous. It was the same voice Harry had heard when he was in Lockhart's office. He stops, clutching a stone wall, and keeps listening for the voice, and looking around for its source. Ron and Hermione are confused, and Harry explains that it's the voice again, and tells them to shut up. So hungry. For so long. Harry tells his friends to listen, but they freeze and watch him. Kill. Time to kill. Harry hears the voice moving upward and runs after the sound, Ron and Hermione on his heels. They run up to the first floor, and the two question Harry again, who tells them to be quiet. Harry hears something from the floor above. "I smell blood. I smell blood." Harry shouts that it's going to kill someone and runs some more up to the 2nd floor. They turn a corner into a deserted passage. Ron asks Harry what this was all about and says he couldn't hear anything. But then Hermione gasps and points down the corridor. She says, "Look." So before we get into what exactly they see, how weirded out would you be if one of your friends heard a voice and was like, "Come with me, come with me"? That's really creepy. I think he was like out of his mind.
Yeah, I'd be really freaked out, and just because it's their 2nd year of Hogwarts, they don't know everything in the castle yet. So that would come into play, and also Harry's not exactly your typical wizard. So if I was Ron and Hermione, I'd just be like, this is kind of typical Harry, but what is happening?
I'd follow him not because I was curious about what he was hearing, but just to see if he's okay.
Yeah, because he's always ending up in danger.
Agreed. So let's talk about what they see. Something is shining on the wall ahead of them. Foot-high words had been daubed on the wall between two windows, shimmering in the light cast by the flaming torches. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. How would you react if you saw this?
First, even though Harry doesn't think this because of the situation, I would first think about Dobby, because Dobby tried to keep him from going back to school because he knew something bad was going to happen, and then this goes down. So Harry should have listened to Dobby. And also the whole enemies of the air thing, that's super ominous. And I think that is what would scare me. Not necessarily the chamber being open, but this whole enemies of the air thing.
I agree. And when you hear the word air, you think that they're inheriting something, right? So the air is inheriting whatever this creepy chamber is. And you're just kind of standing there wondering, where's the chamber? What's inside of it? Who's the heir? And that is the catalyst for the rest of the book, the mystery behind the chamber, which makes it so interesting to read. That's why I think that Chamber of Secrets is so underrated. This is one of the coolest mysteries of the castle. So the creepiness doesn't stop there. Ron asks what that thing is hanging underneath, and the trio edges closer. Harry almost slips in a puddle of water on the floor before his friends catch him. They see a dark shadow beneath the message on the wall. Realizing what it was, they leap backward. It's Mrs. Norris, hanging by her tail from the torch bracket. She was stiff as a board, her eyes wide and staring.
Good for her.
What? What do you mean?
We all hate her. Good for her.
Honestly, I think Mrs. Norris was an accidental target because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So Ron says they should get out of there, and Harry asks if they should try and help, but Ron says that they don't want to be found here. But before they could do anything, the trio is pinned to where they stand as students come out from the feast and block both ends of the corridor. Then Draco shouts, "Enemies of the air, beware! You'll be next, mudbloods!" Draco pushes to the front of the crowd. Harry notices that his cold eyes are alive, his face is flushed, and he's grinning at the hanging cat. So this definitely puts Draco in the position of being the culprit, because he's really excited about this.
And we see that Draco is the red herring throughout this entire book because Harry thinks the exact same thing.
Exactly. I mean, I'd be happy that the cat was petrified because I didn't like the cat, but at the same time, I'd feel bad for Filch.
Are you kidding me? You feel bad for Filch? What?
Look, anybody with a pet knows that it's terrible when something happens to them. And even though I don't like Filch, I feel a little bit of sympathy. Speaking of Filch, he comes through the crowd and notices Harry and his cat hanging there, and he says that Harry has murdered his cat and that'll kill Harry. Dumbledore stops this tirade and takes Mrs. Norris off the torch bracket. He beckons Filch and the trio to come with him. Lockhart offers up his office, and he, McGonagall, and Snape follow them away from the crime scene. As they entered Lockhart's darkened office, there was a flurry of movement across the walls. Harry saw several of the Lockharts in the pictures dodging out of sight, their hair in rollers. Why and how can portraits beautify themselves?
I have no idea, but it's Lockhart, so are we surprised? No.
Lockhart lights some candles, and Dumbledore places Mrs. Norris on his desk, examining her. The trio sit and the teachers gather near Dumbledore to watch. Snape looks like he's trying not to smile, while Lockhart blathers on about what might have happened to Mrs. Norris, as if he knows. Filch is slumped in a chair near the desk, crying. Finally, Dumbledore tells the assembled group that Mrs. Norris has been petrified, but he's not sure how it could have happened. Filch says to ask Harry. Dumbledore says that Harry couldn't have done this because this is advanced dark magic. But Filch goes off. He says that Harry did it, and he wrote on the wall, and that he knows Filch is a squib. Harry pleads innocent and says he doesn't know what a squib is. Filch says that Harry found his quickspell letter. Snape butts into this ridiculous exchange and says that they could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and asks why they were there and not at the feast. The trio explain that they were at the Death Day party. When Snape asks why they didn't go back to the feast, Harry says they were tired and wanted to go to bed. "Without any supper?" said Snape, a triumphant smile flickering across his gaunt face. "I didn't think ghosts provided food fit for living people at their parties." "We weren't hungry," said Ron loudly, as his stomach gave a huge rumble. Snape's nasty smile widened. This is hilarious. At first, Snape is defending them, but then he's like, nah, they're guilty of something.
Yeah, but then at the same time, like, Snape kind of said they might have been at the wrong place at the wrong time. So Snape isn't full out accusing them here, which is kind of different for his character. Like, you would think he'd be like, oh, they did it. Potter did it. Expel Potter now. But he's not.
Yeah, but at the same time, he knows that Harry's not telling the entire truth. So he does want to hear what Harry didn't tell them.
Right, and I think it's also interesting here too because I'm pretty sure Snape knows about the chamber because he's a Slytherin. And so maybe Snape just knows there's no way Harry could have opened the chamber.
Next is my favorite part of this whole scene. There's an exchange between Snape and McGonagall. Snape says Harry isn't telling the whole story, and until he's ready to be honest, he should be kicked off the Gryffindor Quidditch team. McGonagall says that there's no evidence that Harry has done anything wrong, and besides, it's not like he hit Mrs. Norris over the head with a broomstick. That's hilarious.
We stand McGonagall.
This is why she's one of my favorite characters. Dumbledore says innocent until proven guilty, and Filch is still mad about this. He wants Harry punished. Dumbledore says that Professor Sprout has some mandrakes, and once they've reached their full size, he'll have a potion made to restore Mrs. Norris. How cool is that? These screaming, weird-looking plants actually have a really cool purpose.
Yeah, this is why Herbology and Hufflepuff deserve more credit. Because without Professor Sprout and the mandrakes, the ones who got petrified wouldn't have been revived.
Exactly, and how convenient it is that the mandrakes are introduced in this book. This is not a coincidence. Lockhart says he'll make the potion before Snape coldly reminds him who the real potions master at this school is. Then, after an awkward pause, Dumbledore dismisses the trio. Oh, Lockhart, he's always trying to one-up everyone, even though he can't do anything.
So now we get to another petrification. While Harry's in the hospital wing after the Quidditch match where Lockhart removed all the bones in his arm, the idiot, Harry's talking to Dobby about the Chamber of Secrets, but this conversation is cut short when there are footsteps in the passageway outside of the hospital wing. Dumbledore comes in carrying what looks like a statue, and McGonagall follows close behind carrying its feet. They heave it onto a bed, and Professor Dumbledore tells McGonagall to go get Madame Pomfrey. She returns with her, and Madame Pomfrey asks what happened. Dumbledore said, another attack. Dumbledore said that McGonagall found him on the stairs, and McGonagall picks up the story from here and says that there were grates beside him, and that she thinks that he was sneaking up to see Harry. This interests Harry, so he raises himself up to take a look at who's on the bed. It was Colin Creevey. His eyes were wide, and his hands were stuck up in front of him, holding his camera. How would you feel at this point if you were Harry? Because we know that Colin annoys Harry all the time, but still, how would you feel here?
I'd feel guilty and a little bit responsible because Colin Creevey is a first year and he doesn't know anything about magic or about Hogwarts. All he knows is that he admires Harry, and by taking this step, it was risky, and obviously Colin got petrified.
Yeah, I think I'd feel really guilty too. Madame Pomfrey asked if he's petrified, and McGonagall says yes. Dumbledore reaches for the camera, and McGonagall wonders whether or not Colin got a picture of his attacker. But when Dumbledore opens the back of the camera, a jet of steam comes out, and Harry smells burnt plastic. Obviously, at this point, we don't know what is in the chamber and what is attacking people, but can we just talk about how strong this creature must be to literally burn the film in the camera?
Exactly, and think about how the creature only burned the inside of the camera. The outside is intact. That takes some skill.
It really does. I think that's really interesting. And once we learn more about the creature, it will definitely make sense. Professor McGonagall asks Dumbledore what this means, and he says, "It means," said Dumbledore, "that the Chamber of Secrets is indeed open." Then McGonagall asks Dumbledore, "Who?" And Dumbledore says, "The question is not who. The question is how." This is interesting here because it suggests that Dumbledore knows who opened the chamber last time, and not only this, but the person who opened it last time shouldn't have been able to open it again.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And the only student that we know at Hogwarts who's powerful is Harry. And Harry knows nothing about the chamber, let alone that it involves Slytherin or that he has to speak Parseltongue in order to activate it.
Yeah, and also at this point, Harry doesn't know what Parseltongue is, even though he spoke it in the first book when he set the boa constrictor on Dudley. He still doesn't know what it is until the dueling club that's coming up soon. So for Harry, this is just all confusing. During the dueling club, things get messy between Harry and Draco. When Draco casts Serpent Sortia and the snake appears, Harry speaks Parseltongue to get it to back away from Justin Finch Fletchley, which looks really bad because Parseltongue is a mark of Salazar Slytherin and is known to be one of his talents. Harry feels low-key guilty about this whole thing and wants to apologize to Justin and explain what happened, that he was actually telling the snake to back off. And when he goes to look for him in the library, he meets Ernie Macmillan and the other Hufflepuffs, who aren't very nice to him and accuse him of being the heir of Slytherin and for attacking Justin. Not very Hufflepuff of them, I must say. After this, Harry is walking down a dark corridor when he trips over something. Justin Finch Fletchley was lying on the floor, frigid and cold. A look of shock frozen on his face, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. And that wasn't all. Next to him was another figure, the strangest sight Harry had ever seen. It was nearly headless Nick, no longer pearly white and transparent, but black and smoky, floating immobile and horizontal, 6 inches off the floor. His head was half off, and his face wore an expression of shock identical to Justin's. Where Colin's petrification was shocking, this one's even more strange. How would you react if you came across these two?
If I was Harry, I'd feel like I was being framed because here he was in the library talking to the Hufflepuffs, and they're like, yeah, you really screwed over Justin, and then Justin's there, petrified. So I'd feel like I was being framed, and also the fact that nearly headless Nick is black raises some questions. How can a ghost be petrified? How can an animal like Mrs. Norris be petrified? I guess the monster, whatever it is, works on any creature. And the fact that Nick is black symbolizes death and mourning. So he's petrified, he's mourning whatever he saw, and it brings great sadness too.
Right, this looks really bad for Harry, and I also want to note here that Harry sees spiders scuttling away from the scene, which is important for later. Peeves turns up and alerts everybody of another attack. When Ernie turns up, he says, caught in the act. So, all accusing Harry here, which isn't cool. And then Peeves starts to sing. Oh, Potter, you rotter, oh, what have you done? You're killing off students, you think it's good fun. McGonagall's done with all of this nonsense, tells Peeves to get lost, and then has Professor Flitwick and Professor Sinistra take Justin up to the hospital wing. Then, to prove what a boss she is, she conjures a fan and has Ernie waft nearly headless Nick upstairs. Can we just talk about this? Fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic.
Oh my god, I didn't even notice I made a pun.
No, but seriously though, it's really interesting how this monster can affect Nick. I mean, his color changed, he's immobile just like humans are, and I thought that ghosts couldn't be affected by anything because they're dead. But apparently I was wrong.
Yeah, and since this looks really suspicious for Harry, McGonagall has no choice but to take him up to Dumbledore's office. While he's waiting for Dumbledore, things get even worse because he puts on the sorting hat and starts to think about the whole thing with Slytherin. You've been wondering whether I put you in the right house, said the hat smartly. Yes, you were particularly difficult to place, but I stand by what I said before. Harry's heart leapt. You would have done well in Slytherin. So Harry pulls off the hat because this is not what he wanted to hear. And then things get even worse because Fawkes the Phoenix straight up bursts into flames. And then when Dumbledore comes in, Harry starts freaking out because the last thing he needed was for Dumbledore's bird to die when he was with it. But Dumbledore explains that Fawkes is the Phoenix, and when they are ready to die, they do so, and then they are reborn from the ashes. And then we learn some interesting things about phoenixes. Fascinating creatures, phoenixes. They can carry immensely heavy loads, their tears have healing powers, and they make highly faithful pets. Then Hagrid storms in, defending Harry, and he's also carrying a dead rooster. More foreshadowing. But when Hagrid leaves, Dumbledore asks Harry if there's anything he'd like to tell him. Obviously, many thoughts run through Harry's head, but all he says is, "No, there isn't anything, Professor." So again, what I was saying before, Dumbledore knows about the last time it was opened, so he knows Harry didn't do it.
Yes, but he knows that Harry might know something. Harry might have heard the voices. Harry might have seen something. I mean, he is Harry Potter. He gets visions in his scar all the time.
I also like here how Dumbledore doesn't push him. Like, I'm sure Dumbledore knows Harry's hiding something, but he's not forcing it out of him.
Exactly. He's really great there. And the whole thing with the hat, when he says that you could have done well in Slytherin, just shows how similar he is to Voldemort. And also, Harry will have a bigger role in this than he thinks he will. I'd also be freaking out here, like, did I really do it? Did I have a dream and not remember that I did it? Because all of these things are happening around him. Like, he's the center of this whole thing.
Yeah, and going back to what Snape said, being in the wrong place at the wrong time is literally Harry's motto for this entire book.
This is true. So, Harry finds a diary that was flushed down a toilet, and like Harry Potter, he wants to examine it. So, one night, Harry goes to bed early and looks at the diary. All of the pages are blank, but when he puts a blot of ink onto the first page, it disappears. Then Harry writes, "My name is Harry Potter." I just hear the way he says it in the movie every time I read this scene.
I know, and also not a bright moment for Harry here because you found this object. Obviously, there's something with it, and you basically shouted to the world, "Hey, it's me, I'm Harry Potter, I'm writing in this."
Exactly, how irresponsible is that? I mean, we know the thing, which is Riddle, that's in the diary, is after him, and here he is telling it who he is. He should have said something like what he did on the night bus, where he said he was Neville. He should have said something like that. But no, he's like, "Oh, my name's Harry Potter." How dumb are you? Like, seriously.
Yeah, no, not a bright moment for our pal Harry.
Oozing back out of the page in his very own ink came words Harry had never written. "Hello, Harry Potter. My name is Tom Riddle. How did you come by my diary?" Creepy? How creepy is that?
If I was Harry here, I'd close it and run to Hermione because she was the one casting charms on it earlier to try to figure out what it was doing because it didn't seem to be written in. And so Harry would prove to her, like, something's with it and to figure it out. I wouldn't just sit there and keep writing in it.
Exactly. If there's a person inside there and it's talking to you, I would be so scared. I'd probably toss it out a window or flush it down the toilet. I wouldn't continue writing. But obviously, Harry's not that bright. So Harry explains that he found the diary as someone tried to flush it down the toilet. Riddle replies that he's glad his memories were recorded in some more permanent way than ink, and that there would be people who would not want this diary read because it holds memories of terrible things that happened at Hogwarts. Harry is eager at this point and tells Riddle that he's at Hogwarts currently, and then asks about the Chamber of Secrets.
So Harry revealed his identity, and he told whoever is in the diary where he's at. This is like the worst possible thing to do. Like every horror movie you see, even in real life, like when creepy stuff's going on, you never tell anybody your name or give up your location, and that's literally what he's doing. So dumb.
That's so accurate. I don't even have a response. I'm just gonna get it. Riddle says he knows about it, and that in his day, they said it too was a legend, and it didn't exist. But this was a lie. In my 5th year, the chamber was opened, and the monster attacked several students, finally killing one. I caught the person who'd opened the chamber, and he was expelled. But the headmaster, Professor Dippet, ashamed that such a thing had happened at Hogwarts, forbade me to tell the truth. A story was given out that the girl had died in a freak accident. He says that they gave him a trophy and told him to keep his mouth shut after that. Still, he says, the monster lived on, and the one who had the power to release it was not imprisoned. Would you even trust what he's saying here?
No. Some random person inside a diary is writing back to me. I'm not going to believe anything.
Me too. I think that this was like a Zonko's product that was meant to prank me and scare me. But Harry is so gullible, and he continues. He explains that there were 3 attacks and asks Riddle who did it, and Riddle says that he can show Harry and take him inside his memories to the night that Riddle caught the culprit. Harry says, okay. Why would you agree to that?
Yeah, what if he went into the memory and then got trapped in there and couldn't get out?
Yeah, exactly. It's a classic horror film. The pages of the diary blow, finally landing on June 13th. The square looks like a tiny TV screen, and curious, Harry presses his eye against it. And before he knew what was happening, he was tilting forward. The window was widening. He felt his body leave his bed, and he was pitched headfirst through the opening in the page, into a whirl of color and shadow. He lands in the headmaster, Professor Dippet's office, at the time Riddle was at Hogwarts. Dippet is a wizened, frail-looking wizard, bald, except for a few wisps of white hair. Dippet is reading a letter at his desk when Harry arrives. After talking to Dippet, Harry realizes that he's just a bystander in these memories, and that Dippet can't hear him. Just after finishing the letter, Dippet receives a knock at his door, and Riddle enters. Riddle is 16, and is wearing a pointed hat and a prefect's badge. He was taller than Harry, with jet black hair. Dippet says he read Riddle's letter, and that Riddle cannot stay at Hogwarts over the summer. We learn here that Riddle lives in a Muggle orphanage, and that he is a half-blood, with a witch mother and a Muggle father. His mother died just after he was born, naming him Tom after his dad and Marvolo after his grandfather. Nevertheless, Dippet tells him that he can't stay at Hogwarts over the summer, especially due to the recent attacks and the girl's death. Tom would be safer at the orphanage. Besides, the Ministry is thinking of closing the school, since they haven't caught the culprit. Sir, if the person was caught, if it all stopped. What do you mean? Said Dippet with a squeak in his voice, sitting up in his chair. Riddle, do you mean you know something about these attacks? Riddle quickly says no, and Dippet dismisses him. Riddle is similar to Harry. He looks like Harry, he has jet black hair, and when authority asks him a question, he says he knows nothing, when he clearly knows something. And like Harry, he was raised by Muggles.
If I was Harry at this point, I feel like I'd be more interested in Riddle himself rather than what he's showing me because of all that.
Yeah, and this is a precursor to Harry going into the Pensieve, because this is exactly what it feels like when you were inside there.
Yeah, it's a good point too.
When Riddle leaves, he bites his lip, and his forehead is furrowed. It looks like he comes to a decision. Riddle and Harry go down to the entrance hall, where they run into a young Dumbledore, who is tall and has long, sweeping auburn hair and a beard. Dumbledore asks Riddle why he's wandering the halls so late. Riddle says he's been to see the headmaster, and Dumbledore tells him to hurry off to bed and bids him good night. After he leaves, Riddle and Harry head straight for the dungeons, where Harry has potions lessons. Riddle stands in the darkened dungeon and opens the door a crack, so he can watch the passageway outside. Finally, they hear someone passing their hiding place and follow them. They hear a door creak open and someone whispering, "Come on, gotta get you out of here. Come on now, in the box." This is super ominous. Riddle jumps around the corner. He could see the dark outline of a huge boy who was crouching in front of an open door, a very large box next to it. "It's Hagrid!" "Evening, Rubeus," said Riddle sharply. After slamming the door shut and standing up, Hagrid asks what Tom is doing down there. Riddle stepped closer. "It's all over," he said. "I'm going to have to turn you in, Rubeus. They're talking about closing Hogwarts if the attacks don't stop." Hagrid is confused. Riddle goes on to say that he doesn't think Hagrid meant to kill anyone, but monsters aren't good pets, and he supposes that Hagrid just let it out for exercise. Hagrid tells Riddle it didn't kill anyone, and he backs up against the closed door, from behind which you hear rustling and clicking. Riddle moves closer, saying that the girl's parents will be here tomorrow, and the least they can do is make sure to kill the monster. Hagrid again says that it wasn't him. The monster, I mean. But Riddle's not having it. He tells Hagrid to stand aside. The memory ends with the two boys getting into a scuffle and the monster escaping. This is a huge bombshell here. Hagrid, the nice, caring, loving giant, doing this? If it was me, I wouldn't believe Riddle at all.
Yeah, I agree, and it's such a blow to Harry, and even though he saw this, I mean, Anything can happen in the wizarding world, even though this memory was real. But we find out later that Hagrid and the monster weren't responsible. You never know if memories can be altered, which we do find out they can with the whole Slughorn thing. So I'm surprised Harry believes this so quickly.
Harry sees darkness and feels as though he's falling and lands spread eagle on his bed in present day, with the diary open on his stomach. When Ron comes in, Harry tells him, "It was Hagrid, Ron. Hagrid opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago."
Right before a Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff is about to start, Professor McGonagall runs onto the Quidditch pitch with a purple megaphone and tells everybody to go back into the castle and to their common rooms where their head of houses will give them further instructions. She tells Harry and Ron to come with her, and Harry at this point is wondering how he can possibly be accused this time because he was on the Quidditch pitch, but McGonagall takes them up to the hospital wing. Harry first sees Penelope Clearwater, the 6th year who he asked directions from for the Slytherin common room when he was disguised with Polyjuice Potion, and then he sees Hermione. Hermione lay utterly still, her eyes open and glassy. Up to this point, all the petrifications were absolutely terrible, but now it's Hermione, and that brings a whole new level of confusion and terror and sadness for Harry and Ron.
Exactly. I mean, Hermione was a Muggleborn. She's one of the smartest Muggleborns there ever was, but it's still terrifying to see someone close to you laying there immobile on a bed.
Right, and I guess we can kind of say that this was kind of bound to happen, just because from the very beginning, Hermione was so set on the Polyjuice Potion thing and breaking rules because she knew the heir of Slytherin was after Muggleborns. So she knew that she was in danger. And now seeing her lying here is just such a blow to Harry and Ron.
Exactly, especially because she was on the monster's trail the whole time. And the monster, or whoever it was, as we know, knew this and felt threatened. So there she is, petrified.
I know, it's just terrible. McGonagall tells Harry and Ron that Hermione and Penelope were found near the library. She also shows them a small circular mirror and asks if they know anything about it, which they don't. McGonagall takes them back to the Gryffindor common room, where she gives the Gryffindors the bad news. All students will return to their house common rooms by 6 o'clock in the evening. No student is to leave the dormitories after that time. You will be escorted to each lesson by a teacher. No student is to use the bathroom unaccompanied by a teacher. All further Quidditch training and matches are to be postponed. There will be no more evening activities. After this announcement, she continues, "I need hardly add that I have rarely been so distressed. It is likely that the school will be closed unless the culprit behind these attacks is caught. I would urge anyone who thinks they might know anything about them to come forward." After McGonagall leaves, Lee Jordan speaks up, saying that all of this is coming from Slytherin. There are Gryffindor attacks as seen with Nearly Headless Nick and Colin Creevey. There's a Hufflepuff attack with Justin Finch-Fletchley and a Ravenclaw one with Penelope Clearwater. So, he says they should all just kick all the Slytherins out, which is a really good point. But for Harry and Ron, they are feeling super down because now they have to go speak to Hagrid. They don't believe that Hagrid opened the Chamber of Secrets this time, but because he was accused for it last time, they think he might know information. But when they go down, Cornelius Fudge, Mr. Malfoy, and Dumbledore show up. We learn here that Dumbledore has been suspended by the governors and that Hagrid is going to be taken to Azkaban. Before Hagrid leaves, he calls back to Harry and Ron. If anyone wanted to find out some stuff, all they'd have to do is to follow the spiders. That'd let them right. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, this petrification really hits home, like we said, because of Hermione, but also because they don't know who to trust, right? They think that Hagrid may or may not have done it. And then they see Hagrid being carted off to Azkaban, and they're like, well, he must have done it. He must have had a big role in it if he's leaving Hogwarts. And that would scare me. Because if I was Harry, I'd think of Hagrid as like a really cool mentor. And he's leaving and Dumbledore's leaving. I just feel so isolated and alone and scared.
And also we see these petrifications have a connection to Harry, and everyone thinks that he's the heir of Slytherin, We know that he doesn't like Mrs. Norris. Colin Creevey was annoying him. He spoke to Penelope Clearwater when he was disguised with Polyjuice Potion looking for the Slytherin common room. He's best friends with Hermione. The whole thing with Justin, joined the dueling club. So all of those who are petrified are connected to Harry in some way, which is really interesting looking at this as like the mystery plot that it is. But then also, like, the clues that we find out throughout the book, like the whole spiders thing. Like, as I mentioned before, when Harry saw Justin and Nearly Headless Nick, he noticed spiders scuttling away from them. And then now here, Hagrid is telling him to follow the spiders. So I love the second book so much because I feel like there's so many clues sprinkled in throughout. And because I love mysteries, I love this book.
I agree. And speaking of petrifications, Nick is connected to Harry because he's the head of Gryffindor House, and he's one of the nicest ghosts. So the fact that he was petrified also hits home too. With Harry, the mystery thickens, right? Because of the spiders, because of the petrifications, because his friend Hagrid and Dumbledore are leaving. It just gets real scary real quick, and the rest of the book is a little bit dark, which I really like. The first Sorcerer's Stone was kind of a light book, but the series gets darker as it goes on, which is really interesting.
Yeah, and even looking at this book alone, as we find out more about why Hagrid wants them to follow the spiders, what they'll find, what's really in the chamber, like there's so many mysteries to be solved. And we're going to do that next time.
We hope you guys enjoyed delving into the mystery of the Chamber of Secrets, and we will be discussing the rest of the book in episode 6, part 2, which comes out next Friday on November 20th. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you guys again for listening. Can't wait to dive into more Chamber of Secrets mysteries next time. Bye!
Bye! Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Half-Blood Princesses, a Harry Potter podcast.
Hedwig's theme and Leaving Hogwarts in this episode were originally composed by John Williams and arranged by me. Until next time, mark this page with a magical bookmark.